Hi, everyone. My name is Alexandra Taggart, and this is for Dr. Jenkins Family and Rehab Services final presentation. Give me just a minute while I share my screen here. Here we go. Let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger. Okay, hopefully that works. All right, so I did my family services project on a family who lives down the street. Let me see if, there we go. I just want to start off with a disclaimer here. I've changed all of the names of the family members who live down the street from me to protect their identities per their request. They're available, or they were agreeable and available to me to help me with this project, as long as this presentation is for educational purposes for families who are struggling with disabilities right now. So I just wanted to say that before I start my presentation. Okay, now that I've said that, I'll go ahead and introduce you to the family who I've been working with. The mom, her name is Sarah, which has been changed. She's 28 years old and she's a bank teller. The dad, his name for this presentation is Tom. He's 30 years old and he's a contractor. And 4 years ago, they gave birth to their son, Jacob, who was diagnosed with autism. So at 3 years old, Jacob was diagnosed with autism. His parents, they had noticed some differences in Jacob when comparing him to other children. Some things that they noticed included Jacob not wanting to play with other people. He was unable to focus on a task, and he was unable to connect an object for what its purpose was. Like, for example, Jacob can't look at a fork and say, oh, this fork is for eating. He would just be like, what is this object? What does this do? He was also unable to imitate actions. Like a lot of parents, you know, they want to teach their children like how to blow a kiss, for example. So they would keep doing that to Jacob, and he was unable, like no matter how many times they tried, to try and get him to blow a kiss. So, you know, Sarah was like, okay, so I sense there's some delay here in Jacob. Let's take him to the pediatrician and see what the pediatrician thinks. And the pediatrician recommended that Jacob would be screened for autism, and that's when they got his diagnosis. So Sarah actually told me that it's not uncommon for children that young to be screened and diagnosed for autism, which I didn't know about. I guess the average age that pediatricians recommend the screening is at 18 months. The initial diagnosis was really difficult for Sarah and Tom to comprehend. And, you know, they're still learning every day about Jacob and, you know, like what kind of quirks Jacob has and, you know, what's going to upset him, what's going to make him happy. And they're definitely still battling that to this day. So after, you know, getting to know Jacob, getting to know Sarah, getting to know Tom, I really wanted to know, how can I serve you? How can I help your family? So there were a couple of suggestions that they had in order for me to help them. They said that they would love to be able to go on a date night. And they always had trouble finding someone to watch Jacob because he does need certain things. Like certain things will set him off. There are certain ways that you know, are going to upset him if you talk to him in a certain way. If he feels a certain texture or sees a certain object, he's going to get upset. and they didn't have any friends here. They didn't have any family here because they just moved here from out of state. So what I wanted to do was to be able to get to know Jacob enough to where Sarah and Tom were comfortable with me watching him while they were gone so that they could go to a date night. So after Jacob and Sarah were off, or Tom and Sarah were off work, I would go over there and hang out with Jacob, and they would teach me different things about Jacob. Like, he likes certain foods. Foods can't be mushy like spaghetti. He doesn't like the texture of spaghetti. He likes things to be salty and crunchy, but not hard. He's very, very particular. He doesn't like any textures that are scratchy. He only likes things that are soft. So for example, he has a lot of like really fuzzy plush stuffed animals, and whenever he's upset, you'll just hand him a stuffed animal and he'll just squeeze it as tight as he can, and that will make him happy. So after, I got to know these little quirks about Jacob, I spent the night with him, and we watched movies, and we played with his stuffed animals. Well, he played with them. He didn't let me play with them. And Sarah and Tom were able to go out and catch a movie themselves and get some dinner and just have some adult time without Jacob. And they said that they had not been able to do that, like, pretty much since he was born. So they seemed very thrilled and very happy that they were able to do that. And I was glad that I was able to watch Jacob for them, and I would do it again in a heartbeat whenever they're ready. So after that date night, I, wanted to know how to help Jacob, what Sarah and Tom were doing to help Jacob with coping with these different battles he's going through right now with his speech and with his social communications and interactions. And Sarah said that she would be interested in learning about services that would help Jacob with his tactile defensiveness, like his not liking the different textures of fabrics and foods, because it's really challenging trying to find fabrics that Jacob will wear. Like, if a shirt's too itchy or the tag's too big, like, he'll throw a fit and he'll like take it off, and he'll be screaming and crying. And if she serves him food that he doesn't like, same thing. So she wants to make sure that he's getting a balanced diet and he's not totally uncomfortable in his clothes all the time. She also wants to know how she can help him to improve his speech and improve his socialization, because she does eventually want to get him into a daycare program and get him started in school and get him out with other kids. So I educated her on the benefits of occupational therapy and speech language pathology. The occupational therapy can help with the tactile defensiveness and help with identifying objects for their purposes, and also help with socialization and help to make some goals for that. Whereas the speech language pathology would help Jacob with learning how to form words or find another way of communication, such as like a communication board. It'd be also maybe able to help with the food issues. She said that she'd be really interested in these services, and I recommended maybe she could talk to her pediatrician and see if she can get a referral. So she actually texted me today and said that she's getting that process started, and she sounds really happy about it. Tom sounds really happy about it, and I'm excited, and I hope that those services are able to help Jacob. I also wanted to know through this project how we can help other families. So I asked Sarah and Tom how I could help educate other families with young children of disabilities. And Sarah told me that she said just paying attention to the early warning signs of autism is really important, and not to second guess yourself as a mother, not to think, oh, I'm just being, an overbearing mom, or I'm being overprotective, or I'm over worrying. Like, not to tell yourself that they will just grow out of it, that I'm panicking over nothing, because that is what she did. And she was convinced by her mom to bring Jacob in, and that's when they found out that he really did have a diagnosis, and there really was something that they needed to work on there, and really was something that they needed to help him with. So she says, if you have any doubts in your mind, it's the safest bet just to talk to a professional. So Sarah and Jacob, they wanted me to include in this presentation as part of the educational purposes for families with disabilities, the early signs of autism in young children. So this is to inform others who, may have a child and they think maybe something is going on, but they're not really sure. And these are the typical early warning signs, even though they can really vary from person to person depending on what part of the autism spectrum the individual is at. So one of them is the social interaction difficulties or a disconnection to others. The child may seem distant to loved ones, like even their mom and dad, and they don't understand facial expressions or social cues. So you may be scolding the child and they don't understand, and maybe they're laughing, or maybe you're laughing and having fun with them, and then all of a sudden they're crying. They don't understand those social cues, those facial expressions. Another big one is that they are missing developmental milestones, such as like being able to use a utensil for eating. Like Jacob, he would look at a fork and be like, I don't know what this is. Like, what do you want me to do with this? Even though there was a plate of food in front of him, everybody else was using their fork. He was unable to mimic that motion with the fork to eat. And even with like hand over hand assistance, he would still fight it like he didn't understand what was happening. They also have delayed speech. So at 3 years old, most children, they're at least able to babble or to mimic what other people are saying. Jacob does have a delayed speech, and right now he's 4 and he's just starting to babble. So just as like a general range for ages, at age 1, a child should know at least a few single words. At 18 months, they should know an average of 6 words. At 2 years, they should have like 2-word phrases. And at 3 years, they should be able to form sentences. Okay. So I also wanted to include in this presentation how parents can find help once they do receive a diagnosis. I think it's really important when you do get the diagnosis to talk to your pediatrician about the next steps, what's going to be beneficial for the child, for their learning, for their growing, for reaching these developmental milestones that they're behind on. Obviously, as an occupational therapy assistant, I'm a huge advocate for occupational therapy and pediatrics. These can help children with autism with their tactile defensiveness, with their ability to learn the use of objects, with their grasp patterns, and even being able to interact socially with other people, picking up on those facial cues, on those social cues. Speech therapy is also very great because a lot of children on the autism spectrum have delayed speech. So that would absolutely help them with being able to either speak better or to find alternative methods for communication, such as, whether it be sign language or communication board or something electronic that will help them. I also really want to advocate for respite care, just seeing firsthand what having one night of respite did for Sarah and Tom. I want to open up to them and reach out to them anytime they just want to maybe have an adult night or relax, and I want them to feel comfortable with whoever is watching Jacob. And there are respite care agencies out there who do specialize in autism spectrum children. And it's important to find that information. And, you know, that information can be found at your pediatrics office. It could be found online. You could find it through maybe your occupational therapist or your speech therapist. And I just wanted to include my photo references there throughout this whole presentation. So those are my photo references. And I also wanted to give a huge thank you to Sarah, Tom, and Jacob for trusting in me and allowing me to get to know you and to spend time with your beautiful family. And I also wanted to thank the class and Dr. Jenkins for watching my presentation. And I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you.